Okay, now let's move on to talk about chapter 5 of book 2 of Wealth of Nations, the different employment of capital. So, according to Adam Smith, there are 4 different ways of employing capital, and the quantity and type of labor employing these 4 different ways are different too, and the location where these capitals are employed may be different as well. And he also made a remark on the superiority of agriculture. So these are the 4 different ways of employing capital. One is procuring root produce, right? For example, employed in cultivation of the land, in digging up the mines, in catching fishes, this kind of stuff. And then the second one is in manufacturing. Third one is in transportation, right? So these are the trade carried on by the wholesale merchants who carry goods from one place to another. Lastly is in distribution. So these are capital employed by the retailers, right, who distributes the goods. And these 4 different branches, they are interdependent, right? So you cannot manufacture with root produce, and your root produce is useless if there's no demand for if there's no one to manufacture your root produce, right? Manufacture or consume your root produce. Transportation is necessary, right? Because that opens up market for both root produce and manufactured goods. Distribution is necessary as well, right? Because it offers convenience to people, and you will not be forced to buy whole chunks of goods, right? For example, without butchers, you will be forced to buy entire pig or entire ox, which you may not want to. You may only want 2 pounds of meat, for example. Okay, the quantity of productive labor employed is different in these 4 different ways. With farming employ the most productive labor and adds most value to the annual produce of one nation, and with retailers employing the least, right? So capital of the retailer only employs himself. I guess that's because retail stores back then, they were small stores and usually are family run. So yeah, the retailer only employs himself and his family, right? And capital of the wholesale merchant, right, employs himself, his sailors, and his carriers who moves the goods around, right? And capital of the master manufacturer, right, would employ himself and the workman who works in his factory or workshop. And lastly, capital of the farmer, right, employs himself, his laborers, and his cattle. And Adam Smith argued that, for farming, nature labors along with man, right? And what man does is really just directing the fertility of nature towards the production of plants most profitable to man. And the advantageous profit, right, revenue offered by agriculture is reflected in the large portion of rent of farmland, right? Back then, 1/3 to 1/4 is the common rent of many farmland in Great Britain, right? So that indicates farming can offer a lot extra profit, extra revenue, right? And for all these reasons, it's a lot more advantageous to employ capital in agriculture. And this is being shown by the rapid progress of the North American colonies. Almost all their capitals are employed in agriculture, right? And their exportation and coasting trade, right? So moving goods from one coastal town to another coastal town. These were carried on by capital of merchants who lived in Great Britain, right? So you see the North American colonists, right? They employ their capital in the most advantageous possible way, which is in agriculture, and that enabled them to progress very fast. So where are the different parts of capital being employed, right? So in the capital employed in agriculture must reside within the home country, right? Because this capital is confined to the farmland, and capital employed in retail is within in the home country as well, right? Because it's confined to the retail shop itself, right? But capital of the wholesale merchant can be anywhere, right? It can be employed anywhere. It depends on where the merchant can buy cheap and sell dear. And capital of the manufacturer, right? Also can be anywhere, right? It depends on where the factory or workshop is. And the master manufacturer, right? The employer may choose wherever is most convenient, most profitable to him. Adam Smith, he dig deeper into the wholesale trade and then further categorized it into 3 different trades: the home trade, the foreign trade, and the carrying trade. And I will explain what each one of these are. So the home trade is within one country, right? You buy from place A, sell to place B, and then buy something in place B and then carry that back to a place A and sell it, right? So the example he gives is, say a merchant, right, sends Scotch manufacturers to London, and in London he buys English corn and send back to Scotland and sell it there, right? So in this process, he would replace 2 domestic capitals, right? One is those of the Scotch manufacturers, right? The other one is of those English farmers who sold him these English corn. So see, quite a bit of encouragement given to domestic industry, right? What about foreign trade, right? So it's the same thing: buy from place A, sell to place B, and then buy from place B and sell back to place A. But in this case, place A is perhaps a foreign city, right? And place B is a domestic city. In this way, you replace one foreign capital and one domestic capital. And the industry given the encouragement given to home industry is less, right? It's not just because in this case only one domestic capital is being replaced, but also because of the longer distance, right? So it takes longer to complete one trip and complete the transaction, right? So yeah, so the rate is also slower, right? Whereas in the home country, due to smaller distance, you can carry on the trade many times in a year. But for the foreign trade, as mentioned by Adam Smith back then, it may take 2 to 3 years to complete to get a return for this trade, right? And carrying trade is well, in this case, place A and place B are both in foreign countries, so you replace 2 foreign capitals. Not that much encouragement to domestic industry is given. So with these explained, he argued that foreign and carrying trade should not be encouraged by national policy, right? Because they give less encouragement and also slower encouragement to domestic industry. These trades are only advantageous when they are naturally introduced, right? So for example, the home country has become so productive that a lot of these surplus produce cannot be sold at home, right? It exceeded domestic demand. So what do? You sell them to foreign countries and bring back some foreign goods that are in demand at home. In this way, you can, the surplus produced will have some value in exchanging these foreign goods, right? Or you got so rich that all the capital that you accumulate cannot be entirely employed at home. So what do? Right? The excess capital would flow into the carrying trade. And then whatever profit that you get from the carrying trade is net gain to the national produce. So yeah, foreign trade and carrying trades, they are just symptoms of national wealth, not the cause, and should not be encouraged. And to recap, right? So we discussed 4 ways of employing capital in procuring root produce, right? So that includes agriculture, fishery, mining, this kind of stuff. With agriculture being the most productive one, and manufacturing, wholesale trade, and retail. And more or less encouragement to domestic industry is depending on the location where these capitals are employed and the manner in which they are employed. And that concludes book 2 of Wealth of Nations.